Chapter 27. London, England, June 13th, 1889. The carriage departed from King's Cross Station in the late afternoon, with Haley and Strawberry sitting opposite each other in its lavish interior. The journey through London passed mostly in silence, feeble attempts at conversation muted by the thrum of the city around them and the rattling of the carriage on the cobbled streets. Much of their time together over the last few days had been silent. Yet it was a welcome, soothing silence. They were, for the first time in a long time, given comfort in each other's company, in the knowledge that there was, at the very least, someone else there, someone they trusted. Haley was surprised at how easily the pair had fallen back into their old rhythms. The ease at which they had moved past and around each other, reading aloud by the firelight, making the correct kinds of tea with the correct amounts of milk and sugar. It all came back to them so simply, as if it hadn't been years since they had lived together during university, the walls of their rented townhouse plastered with botanical sketches and landscape paintings. The seed of a feeling that had been planted weeks ago at the meeting of the Fable Society was beginning to grow in Haley's chest. A dull, longing ache which pained her more than she was willing to admit, even to herself. Haley realized that she missed her friend, desperately. She missed all her friends, of course. She missed tea with Centros and exchanging notes with Sherbet, discussing maps with Will and ancient texts and myths with Ray. She missed looking after Jamie and Easton in the summer months when the two children would come to Bristol to visit her. Day trips from the estate out to the sea and games of hide-and-seek in the manor's twisting halls. And most of all, she missed sitting with Strawberry beneath a towering oak tree in the gardens of Garfield Estate. She missed curling up together by the fire after long days of studying, the red-headed woman's presence an anchor to the life she had chosen for herself. Haley was ashamed that she had allowed her life to pull them so far apart. Her friends had scattered to all corners of the globe, and she had been left alone by her own devices for so many years now. She couldn't help but feel it was, in some way, her own fault. Perhaps this trip to London, finally breaking out of her hermit-like state, getting to spend time with Strawberry after all this time apart, should finally pull them all closer together once more. After all, things couldn't be too bad. They couldn't be too far beyond repair. Haley couldn't let herself believe that. "Dear God," Strawberry breathed, a hand shooting up to cover her mouth. Haley was dragged from her thoughts as she followed Mumbo's gaze out the window. The city block which should have contained Ray's London home was rendered an empty, blasted heath. The state of the house was merely a pile of charred rubble, stone and debris, bleeding out onto the streets in fragments of life, the wreckage looted for all it was worth. "You're sure this is the place, ma'am?" "You're sure this is the place, ma'am?" the driver of the carriage asked into the compartment. Haley was too busy gathering the ends of her large black dress to answer. She forced open the door and stepped out onto the streets, the air warm and heavy with the weight of summer. "It's impossible," she muttered, stepping over some of the smaller chunks of rubble to approach the ruins. "Miss? Mum, you ain't allowed in there." A policeman, barely old enough to grow out the patchy orange-peach fuzz which clung to his cheeks, tried to step towards her. Mumbo cut him off, hiking up her own pink dress to follow Haley. "Not now." She held up a white-gloved hand, not even looking at the young man as she delved into the wreckage. Oh. The officer went quiet. Sorry, Mum." The man stood rigid and uneasy off to the side as the two women looked over the scene. As the initial shock wore off, the true nature of the scene began to set in, the deep-seated fear tinged with anger that soaked into Haley's mind. What had happened? Was Ray in some way responsible? Had he destroyed his own home? If that was the case, Haley could almost understand Mumbo's frantic desire to keep Jamie away, even if she disagreed with the methods Strawberry had chosen to accomplish such desires. "What happened here?" Mumbo asked the policeman, turning on her heel. Her dress caught on the jagged stone, pink fabric smeared with dirt and soot. The man started at suddenly being addressed. Well, we don't know, Mum," Probably just pipes, you know? Gas leaks and all, hitting an open flame. Place lit up like a firecracker. Scared a lot of folks around here into getting that new electric stuff. Were there any casualties? Haley asked the question Strawberry was too afraid to raise. The officer shook his head. No, ma'am. No one home, don't think. No one found, at least. Mumbu visibly relaxed, the pink folds of her clothing rustling with the movement. Haley raised an eyebrow, however. If there were no casualties, and they think it was simply a gas explosion, why are you stationed here? The police officer reddened a little in the face. Well, we think it was a gas explosion, Mom, but there's been some suspicious characters seen around here afterwards. Real weird folks, people says. So we're making sure it wasn't anything suspicious. Just to make sure. If this bloke comes back, we'll be waiting. The officer puffed out his chest a little. Weird folks, Haley muttered. At the same time, Mumbu stepped forward and asked her own question. And the owner? Dr. Morningstar, where is he? The policeman shrugged. Dunno. No one's been able to find him. We've contacted his lawyer, though. I can give you his... No, there's no need. Mumbu waved the offer away with her hand. Any ease that had crossed her round features before had washed away. We share the same lawyer. I'll get in touch with Emmanuel myself. I see. The officer cleared his throat. Is there anything else I can help you with? Haley shook her head. She gingerly wrapped a hand around Strawberry's arm and began to lead her away. No, thank you. You've been very helpful. I hope you find whatever weird folks you're looking for. The young man nodded. Thank you, miss. Don't be afraid to holler if you see anyone suspicious. We've got gents stationed all around. A big tall fella, they say he is. Real tall and stick thin. Thank you, Haley nodded over her shoulder, before releasing a long sigh through her nose as she and Mumbu turned back to the street. Well, we most certainly will not be hollering for the police, I suspect. Mumbu let her soft hum in agreement. The concern traced across her face mingled with a deep-set expression of intrigue. Her blue eyes had a steely tone to them, akin to the stormy skies above, which drew Haley further in. Where are they, Haley? Strawberry asked, their breath shaky. I don't know, Haley admitted. But we can check Charlton House. Perhaps even David's villa. She looked up at the sky, which was beginning to darken already. And then, perhaps we find a hotel for the night. Yes, Strawberry nodded. Yes, that sounds good. Haley hailed their carriage once again, and the two women continued their search of London. I don't understand it. Strawberry sat in front of a small fire, a flower-patterned robe pulled over her sleepwear. It's like everyone has just disappeared. I might expect it from Ray or David or even Easton, I suppose, but Sherbet? And Jamie, I just can't. Her voice trailed off, and she chewed her lip anxiously. Actually, I suppose I don't know about Jamie anymore, they added quietly. Haley paced the room. She had yet to exchange her large black dress for evening clothes, and the folds of the fabric caught in the light of the fire elegantly, casting her body in a plaster of shadow, as if she was carved from the darkness itself. I don't know. Perhaps they're all together somewhere. But where? And why haven't they told us anything? Mumbu asked. I mean, not telling you, I understand, but... She stopped herself immediately. God, Haley, I'm so sorry. I didn't mean it like... No, I understand, Haley said, trying to disguise the pang of hurt in her voice. I have made myself scarce recently, and you're much closer to them than I have been. I suppose it's my own fault for isolating myself. You meant no offense. She swallowed the lump which was threatening to build in her throat and tried to distract herself with the issue at hand. Do you think perhaps Jamie and Athena would have gone to Professor Taurus? They're close with him and Emmanuel, aren't they? Strawberry blinked at the shifting conversation. Oh, perhaps. Yes, they are. I suppose we could go tomorrow. I'm already dressed for the night. Haley shook her head. I think perhaps our best bet might be to go now. It's a little late, but I can go alone. She walked towards the door of the room, pulling a grey cardigan from the coat rack. I really don't know if that's... I'll be fine, Strawberry, Haley assured her, perhaps quicker than was necessary. She forced a smile regardless. I just want to make sure. It will free up time tomorrow to come up with other solutions. I'll be back soon, I promise. Haley paused in the doorway. See you in an hour or two, Mumbu. Strawberry's lip twitched at the nickname. It sounded so much easier on her ears when Haley said it. Goodbye, Haley. They waved as Haley closed the door. See you soon. It took Haley some time to figure out where she was going. She had gotten the address wrong, something she felt was excusable considering she had only ever visited Bovine House once before. The cab dropped her off on the right street, at least, and it was easy enough to continue on foot down the dirty road, bathed in the dim light of the street lamps. They tried to stop themselves from coughing, unused to the polluted London air. Haley hadn't brought a watch with her, but she knew it was late. Later than she planned, certainly. It had taken some time to find a carriage willing to take her so far at this time of night. As she neared the house, Haley noticed two figures moving around its entrance. She didn't recognize them, their collars pulled up high and their faces buried in shadows. It didn't seem like they were going inside the house, however. Rather, they were carrying boxes around its base and rolling a series of barrels into the adjoining alleyway beside the house. Haley paused, ducking into an alleyway herself to stay out of view as the figures continued their work, shifting boxes into place. She peered down the road at the strangers, desperately trying to recognize them. Lightning lit up the sky somewhere in the distance, and Haley watched a few flecks of rain dash against the road. After what felt like an eternity, the figures retreated to a separate alley on the other side of the street. The road was silent for a long time, and Haley pulled herself off the wall she had been leaning on and stepped out into the street. She had barely taken 2 steps when she was thrown backwards, struggling to remain on her feet as the ground shook beneath her. The brilliant blast of light blinded them as the rumbling sound clapped around their ears, and the smell of heat and sulfur assaulted their nose. The wave of destruction rolled through the street like thunder. Having barely gathered her bearings, Haley watched as Bovine House collapsed into itself in the aftermath of the explosion, the upper floor crashing down to the ruined base as the barrels of gunpowder lit up in enormous billowing displays of fire and smoke. Haley didn't realize she was running until she had already passed the wreckage of the home, which tumbled forwards onto the street below with another earth-shattering crash. Her feet hammered against the cobbled stones as she raced after the fleeing figures. One was long gone, it seemed, but through blinded, spot-filled eyes, Haley saw the end of a tailcoat whip around a corner. "Hey! Stop!" she screamed as a police whistle sounded in the distance behind her. Bovine House was in a more populated area than Ray's home, and its destruction was sure to draw attention. Haley found herself getting closer to the figure, shoving through thin but gathering crowds with some difficulty due to her dress, darting into alleyways to follow the culprit. Her hands flailed out, reaching for the coat and grasping at empty air. Haley threw herself forwards desperately, lunging to tackle the fleeing arsonist. But she missed. In the seconds before slamming against the concrete, Haley's hand caught on the person's pant leg, and her prey was dragged down in front of her with a yell of surprise. The pair rolled across the ground, exclaiming various cries and grunts of pain as their bodies were battered and scraped by the road beneath them. Haley began to push herself up, and the movement sent blinding pain shooting through her limb. She crashed back to the ground and searched for the person she had chased, as she used her other arm to lift off the stones. A boot slammed into their back, shoving them down against the road. Haley let out a scream of pain, feeling her skin split as her chin was thrust into the stone. Struggling out from under the figure's foot, Haley tried to roll out of the way, ending on her back to look up at the towering presence. Her vision was clouded with tears, and the light from the street lamps cast a brilliant halo around the person she had chased through the streets. Haley's eyes adjusted slowly. She blinked rapidly, as if she could change what she was seeing. When she finally spoke, her voice came out as a breathy plea, the air knocked from her lungs by the fall. Sherbet? Sherbet Quakeson's boot connected with the side of her head, and Haley blacked out, her body falling limp against the ground.